SonicLAB TV.
Hello and welcome to SonicLAB once again. We're looking at the Alesis IODock here, which is an iPad dock with all sorts of audio, MIDI and video connections for use in a kind of musical or audio-visual way. I want to say thanks very much to all of those who left questions on the unboxing video. I know there are quite a lot of questions you want to get through. But first of all, let's take a look at the unit. This is actually quite solid. It is plastic. There is not much metal to it, if any, apart from perhaps the dock, which is down here. First thing that I want to say though is it did come with an adapter for the iPad 2, because obviously when this was first released, the iPad 1 was the only thing that was about, and then Apple, God bless them, almost as soon as this had been announced the iPad 2 in a different shape and everything. Fortunately, this is all you need to work with the IODock and the iPad 2. It slots in as an insert like this and then locks using this little mechanism here, and then it's all solid and works fine with an iPad 2. It ships with the device now. So first of all, let's put an iPad in. You can see there's the dock in there, and now I just take my iPad, slide it in and clip into place. It grabs it quite nicely. Excuse the dirt on my iPad. And it works pretty good. I don't think it's going to mark it for repeated taking in and out. Anyway, let's take a look at the ins and outs. First of all, on the back panel, we have two main outputs, which direct monitoring switch, input 1 and input 2 on combi connectors and take a mic or a line. Input 2 is switchable between mic line. They've also got their own gain control here. Phantom power can be switched on and off. There's also a foot switch, which can be used, I guess, for assigning certain things within applications that support it. A video out, unfortunately no HDMI out for iPad 2, but that's unsurprising since this was designed sort of before that came along. Power supply with an on-off switch. If you plug a power supply in here, then it will charge the iPad while it's in this device, which is actually really handy. Then on the left-hand side, we have MIDI in and out and a USB connection. Unfortunately, this USB connection only acts as MIDI I/O. You can't plug this into your computer and then sync the iPad from within the dock. You have to take it out and use your usual sync cable. That's a bit of a shame. Then on the right hand edge we have main volume and then a separate dedicated headphone volume. Now the first thing that you want to know about this is it doesn't have any A to D and D to A's. This is just tapping into the audio signal that's present in the dock. I've got a MIDI cable coming from the M-Audio here, that's coming to the MIDI in. I've got a stereo out coming out here going into my board. Let's fire up GarageBand. I've got a piano here. Let's just listen to that. It's pretty responsive. I don't feel any particular delay. Sounds okay, though obviously this isn't doing any audio conversion, it's just tapping the audio from the I/O dock. Let's listen to a couple of other applications. We'll take a look at Nano Studio. I particularly like this one, it's got some great synths in it. So let's just have a listen to a synth part. Let's have a look. Nice. Again, it sounds pretty deep. I will try a drum sound so we can just check the responsiveness. It does feel pretty instantaneous. One thing I will say, the form factor, because I can just sit this on my desk or on top of a keyboard if I've got space for it, it actually solves one of the big problems I had with the original iPad, which it just doesn't fit anywhere without rolling about and falling down. So it's a nice just mount for the whole thing in the first place. There are a couple of issues though, and say you did want to know a lot about compatible apps. For instance, if we've got, say, an old iPhone app that you like to use a lot and you load it up, you might find that it's incompatible. If I load iShred here, which is an old iPhone app, it's in portrait mode rather than landscape, so that means it's the wrong orientation. But most applications now have iPad compatible versions. The other thing that was an issue, you were asking about compatibility. I've got a version of Amplitude here for iPad, IK Multimedias, and it says here input is unsupported. So obviously the audio side of things is not universally connective. I don't know whether that's an IK thing, an Alesis thing, or an iPad thing. I'm afraid I can't say. But if you are looking for an amp kind of sim, we've got Amp Kit here, which is this is the free version, which is similar kind of amp sim. Let's take a look at IMS20 as well. This works nicely because obviously it's in the landscape mode and it's the right way around, so that's kind of cool. We'll just let this boot up. See, that works fine too. But it's not all about just accessing MIDI keyboards. I can also hook it to the computer because I've got a USB socket on the IODock as well, and that shows up as a kind of MIDI port. So let's see how that integrates. So I've got a Logic song here just running in the background. Let's just give it a play. And I've got a MIDI track here with the IODock as the output port. My input is my keyboard. Now if I switch to my MIDI keyboard view, stop that a second, you can see that I'm triggering drums. And what I've got here, keeping it in the family, I've got GarageBand running on the iPad. And now all I have to do is hit record. And I won't record loads of that. So you can see there's integration. I'm using my DAW here to integrate with the iPad app over there via the IODock. Very nice. So another thing we should look at is audio processing via input on the IODock into apps. We'll take a look at that in GarageBand as well, because that works pretty nicely. Just a lead out directly into the guitar input, switch into guitar mode, quite a lot of gain. If I just turn up the guitar, you'll be able to hear. No latency as far as I can tell, or certainly not more than I'd expect from this application. The latency is really going to be down to the app, not really anything to do with the IODock because it's not doing any conversion. So I've got a little track here I could just riff along with. As I say, I'm not really a guitarist, but what we'll do now is I'll try it with a mic input and see how that works too. So I've got the Behringer C1, which is a condenser mic, requires phantom power coming off the IODock. I'm monitoring directly through it at the moment. I've got the monitor switch set to direct, and it seems to be working fine. I wonder what happens if I turn the power off. It means whether I'll be able to still power this mic. Right, so to answer a few questions that you very kindly left after the unboxing video, first of all, the USB interface is purely to work between it and a host computer. Unfortunately, you can't just plug like a MIDI device into the USB port and have it driven from the IODock. That would be great, but unfortunately not the case. Another question was, is it possible to maybe mount this, get a stand to mount it on, a stand, maybe put a plate on it? The answer is I'm sure you could. I think the plastic might be tough enough, and with the right sort of glue and know-how you could, but I expect it would void your warranty. Another question was about the video out. Now, not many apps just mirror their outputs, so it's only really going to show your video if you're watching a movie or that kind of thing. But maybe in a version 2 where there might be an HDMI output, which happens with the iPad 2, then maybe we'll start to see that happening. It'd be great, certainly for me to review apps on. Speaking of apps, obviously it doesn't work with everything, and that's something that's a bit puzzling. It doesn't work with IK Multimedia's Amplitude. It doesn't work with the VocalLive thing either, iRig Vocal. I'm not sure why that is, whether that's an IK thing or an Alesis thing, but it just doesn't. But overall, I think this works really nicely. It integrates well, it sits perfectly, and the main thing is it powers the iPad, because any other USB camera kit or whatever, it just sits there until the battery runs out, and that is a real pain, to be honest. So I like the way that it works in terms of form factor. Now on to pricing. I'll quote the street price because basically the full retail price is some ridiculous amount, but I've seen it for 139 UK pounds, 175 euros and 199 US dollars. I think that is actually a pretty fair price, unless of course you're buying it for a specific application which is not supported. Then I think this actually will make it integrate really nicely into your audio setup and into your studio setup. So a thumbs up for this version of the Alesis IODock from me.